I've already had my coffee this morning, so I'm on the good brew. By God, I've found it. I declare I've honestly found it. You will not believe the source of the biggest rumor in trucking today. You want to know what it is? You're going to have to stick around and check out today's Frontlines.
From the trenches of trucking experience and a passionate heavyweight in the Truth in Broadcasting Network. Welcome to Truckin' City News Frontline Podcast. Hosted by the most opinionated broadcaster on YouTube, BossMan.
Yeah, that's right. It's me, live and in the flesh, once again, making waves and saving the day. Howdy-ho to all my Frontline flagship captains out there. You're watching Frontlines, the only place where I give you the story and you take control. Others give you song and dance. Others give you pomp and circumstance. I bring it to you the way the news should be. I give you truth and a hat. We talk about what's new. We talk about the view from 30,000 feet. And then it's on. You call in on our studio line, which I'll show down below here momentarily. You can prove them wrong or prove me right. Either way, it's fun. So subscribe today and join the fight. Start being the solution rather than the spectator. Today, we have an exciting lineup of guests, and we have an audience that's growing by the broadcast. And I have some revealing news. I think I finally figured a solution to a problem and a source to a rumor. And up to now, I've blamed everybody else but. But that being said, I want to first invite you to become a subscriber to my channel and to the channels of the guests that we're about to talk about today. We won't steer you wrong. Reminding you that we do these shows at 11 o'clock on Saturday. We also do a evening show on Wednesday at around usually 8 o'clock called Frontlines. I also do daily shows about other news items. It's under a different name. Keep looking for us. It's called Media Matters. It is a good show. I think this whole thing is a good theory and a good concept. It's catching on quick. Today, a load of another kind. In the bustling year of 1916, when the world was on the cusp of transformation, a journey of epic proportions set forth from the Emerald City of Seattle, sponsored by none other than the esteemed Seattle Chamber of Commerce. A lone truck and its intrepid driver embarked on a mission that would forever change the course of American commerce. Through rugged terrains and endless miles, the valiant truck traversed the vast expanses of the U.S., from shores of the Pacific to the bustling streets of New York City. Along the way, it carried not just goods, but the hopes and dreams of a nation on the brink of modernity. Yeah, try to look that word up. For 31 days and nights, the journey of determination and perseverance unfolded, capturing the imagination of manufacturers and merchants alike. It was a testament to the power of innovation and the indomitable spirit of the American people. It was that grand revelation of this historic expedition that the revelation of highways and truck transport were born. The wheels of progress were set in motion, paving the way for a new era of transportation and commerce. So the next time you go down the road and you see a semi-truck pass you, you see a box truck pass you, and you see what's going on in the cab of that truck, that driver enjoying themselves. Think back to that time in 1916. For there, in the annals of history, the New York to Seattle trek of 1916 stands a testament of the enduring power of vision, determination, and American spirit. A journey that would be a load of like none other. And now you know about this moment in trucking history. I tend to get a tickle out of bringing you a moment in history. I hope you really enjoy this because it's a lot of fun researching this stuff. And on the heels of the stories we're about to talk about today, I feel like it kind of refreshes the mind. It makes you think, it makes you believe more is possible. And I think it just starts the show on a different tone. So let's bring in today's guests and talk about some trucking history. You know him and love him. He's the guy that makes you laugh and makes all kinds of quirky remarks and has emojis up, left, right, and sideways. Driving with John. We're simulcasting on his channel as well. We'll welcome him to the show. Good morning, John. How are you today?
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're here. So what did you think of that little walk back in trucking history? What did you think about that one?
I like the trucking history segments. I think a lot of the history of trucking is not told. So I think it's cool that you go a little step further every week and just share a little something with us all, because honestly, it's hard to lose sight of what trucking's been in the past when we're just trying to deal with what it is now.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said the best way to understand the future of an industry that you're in is by fully understanding and embracing where we've come from. I mean, everybody complains about how, we're getting so laden down with technology and regulations and all these, things in today's trucking industry. Good God, look back at the 1900s and the early times travel. There's the story I just brought up. Yeah, we've come so far. I mean, we really have.
Yeah.
And people just get so grumpy over that. Oh, speaking of grumpy, we've got somebody that really probably has an alternate opinion. Maybe, I don't know.
Great.
Let's see. Maybe he actually remembers this. I don't know. Let's talk about the grumpiest old codger on this side of the planet when it comes to trucking. Good morning to grumpy old trucker. How are you today?
Well, let's see. I got a couple of these guys here that just insist on doing this show every Saturday morning. You know what? I love it. I get up every Saturday morning to do this show. I'm doing fine.
You did miss a show, mister.
Well, excuse me. I was feeling a little under the wind that day.
I hear you.
Gosh.
Well, we all have our moments. Hell, John has even missed a show, so no one's perfect. I, however, will not miss a show. Why? Because it's my damn show. Anyway, so that being said, let's get on to the first story. This one's a little bit on the weird side. Only because it's not too much about history, nor is it anything controversial, but it's a refreshing look at what I consider adaptation. All right. By the way, right now the links are not in the description, but when I close the show, the links to all three stories, I've got three. The links to all three stories will be in the description. It always is. Believe you me, I want you guys to see exactly what it is I'm talking about. This story I'm talking about features a current business owner, wasn't always a business owner, Sue Monahan. In Baltimore, a international warehousing and transportation company established back in 1987 recently faced challenges due to, we all know about it, the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Cargo, which previously arrived by container ships from the ports all over the country, or all over the world, arrived in Baltimore, now comes through alternate ports, New York, Charlotte, or New York, Charleston, all the ports on the East Coast, they've been altered and taken. Now, adaptations this company has had to make has resulted in her being forced to lay off up to 70 drivers. It seriously impacted the company, and they almost, I say this gingerly, almost went under. The company soon applied for and received worker retention grants and brought back the laid off drivers. And now some of these drivers are actually having to make changes to their schedules. And I had originally brought up some B-roll footage, but don't have it because I didn't have the time to bring it up. But the adaptations were being discussed by one Laquan Jefferson. One of the drivers affected was quoted as saying, coming back depends on what time. And he was talking about his new route, because usually it used to be he was around Baltimore. Now he's driving back and forth to Virginia, which is like there and back 6 hours, 8 hours a day. So he says, coming back depends on what time you leave. Friday, it took me 6.5 hours to get home. I like to drive, but I don't like to sit. So he was recounting some of his experiences. And the other bad part about being brought back on the, until they get everything adjusted. The other thing was, they're dealing with a different set of circumstances. Their pay rate's a little different because of that grant, and things are different. Their schedules are different. Their pay is different. So all in all, it's really, they're having to make some serious adjustments. And if you were sitting in a circumstance like that, and maybe you have, John, maybe you've been in a circumstance where you've had to settle or make adjustments for things that didn't exactly fit your schedule or circumstance. Does that story make any sense to you? What have you got to add to
that? You mean like loads that don't, just don't work out timing wise?
Well, originally they were set up on a daily routine. As I read into it, they were just delivering around Baltimore. They go over the bridge, make their local deliveries and transfers to local distribution facilities. Now, in order for them to get the incoming freight that normally runs their business, they've got to drive all the way to Norfolk, and get down to that port down there and bring this stuff up that way. So out and back, you're talking about almost 8 hours. And like this fellow Laquan was talking about, that's an 8-hour day that he originally wasn't planning on. And I don't know how they're compensated, but I gotta only imagine it's probably less than what he made locally. So there's adaptation on both sides.
In trucking, there is never anything set in stone. The one thing that's constant in trucking is change. There's constantly change in your routes, in your days. Even if you have a set route every single day. I have a buddy that works for UPS. Kind of the same scenario, but they get schedule changes every day, it seems like, where they're asked to do things that aren't part of their schedule. So, as true in any part of trucking, the only thing that's consistent is it consistently changes every day. So
it does. Every day is a change. By the way, if you guys got something you'd like to add to the show, either by quote or by value, go ahead and call the studio line, 860-785-3547. 860-785-3547. If you work for a company and a sudden event or natural disaster or even just a changing rule caused you to have to adapt and make serious changes to your day, we'd like to hear about it because, you know what? As John said, adaptation and change is part of trucking. You're going through somewhat of a change yourself right now, Frank. I understand you got to make some adaptations and some changes. How's that working out for you?
Right now, not so well for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to figure out how to be able to get mobile to get back and forth to wherever I'm going to be able to park my tractor and truck or tractor and trailer. Yep. And that's kind of a flip of a coin right now for me.
Right. But you flipped that coin over a year ago. You didn't have that problem, so, in a short period of time, your situation's been put on its head. So, from that standpoint, you've got to make some changes. You've got to make some adaptation.
Yes. And sometimes it's difficult.
It is indeed. So let's see if somebody's got a comment or two.
Yeah,
I
read
think.
Midlife Truckers.
Yeah. Wait, the bridge is out. The Atlas says 695 is a good route. You two, I swear, this Atlas fight, I swear. Go back and replay a couple of lives back. I don't remember which one it was, but we had a discussion about uses of Atlases versus, GPS. Look it up. It's an entertaining conversation, to say the least. All my lives, I try to make them as entertaining as possible, but when Midlife Trucker gets involved and he's actually on screen, watch out. It's going to get real. But yeah, it's always interesting, to say the least. Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, the Atlas might still say the bridge is still there, but the GPS might turn you into a farmer's field. So
the Farmer's Almanac is a good reference for that, I understand.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, if you want to know weather trends, the Farmer's Almanac is the way to go. I'm just saying.
Right, there you go. This one's a little bit more controversial because, well, it's getting a little bit of airplay. I mean, nowadays, think about it. Today's economy, you try to be as nice as you can to people. But that only goes just so far. This chick over here, she's going quite viral. As you can see, the video on her far left is quite a self-explanatory video, really, when you think about it. People are split in their opinions. There are some that are saying she's a Karen, that she's in your face, that she's just like the lady in the neighborhood, that she's just annoying, that she had no business getting out of the truck. Others are saying she was justified. I mean, this whole video is getting a lot of airplay. Mother Truckers talked about it. Boneheads Truckers talked about it. So I figured it took a couple of minutes of my time. I figured it would be worthwhile sharing it with the audience and having a discussion. I mean, honestly, when it comes down to it, this is what she did. And I'm only going to play a couple of seconds of it because there's a little bit of coarse language at the end. But this one right here, let's get perspective on what we're talking about here.
You don't move your tandems in front of the scale.
The scale, I'm not in the scale now.
You're blocking the scale.
I'm moving. I'm just moving.
You just pulled your pin. You're trying to move your
No.
tandems. Move your ass off the scale. You shouldn't.
Okay. That by itself is risque, but I'll let that go. That having been said, okay, I think personally, and this is just my opinion, I personally don't believe directly in front of the scale is an okay place to park under any circumstances. If you've got to adjust your tandems, there's nothing wrong with leaving the scale. And as she pointed out, you saw the camera pan left, there was an empty and vacant spot. My guess is that parking lot was designed that way for that very reason. You have enough room to turn. I mean, yeah, if you got huge oversized loads, it's kind of hard to do. You got to make exceptions. Okay, no problem. But dude, a regular box truck, reefer or not, I don't care. If you're in front of the scale and you've got 3 trucks behind you looking to use that same scale, no, she was justified getting out. And if nothing else, forget the camera, raising hell with the guy. What about what say you on that, Frank? What would you do in that?
Well, the factor of her being there and she's waiting to get on that scale, and then she's on the scale and he's in front of the scale. She's already got her weight from the app. So she's ready to go, or she's ready to pull out and adjust her stuff. With him being parked there going in and getting his ticket, no, there was plenty of places he could have pulled and done all that adjusting and then went back around and rescaled if he needed to. That don't fly with me. I mean, if I know there's no one behind me and I know there's, that I'm going to be good, I'll do it there. But I make sure. But if I got somebody waiting, I'm moving. I don't care if I got to adjust my weights or not. I'm moving. But if there's nobody there, nobody waiting to get on there, I'll adjust it real quick where he's sitting at, in front of the scale. And then sometimes I'll back up on there, make sure my weight's right and get out of there, But if he's like him sitting there and they got 2 or 3 probably waiting to get on there, no, that's just not right.
Right. I agree with you. I'm putting in the StreamYard link on all the channels, on all the venues. If you want to join in on, because I had June ask for the link, if you want to join in on the conversation and come in as a panelist, just like you see here, click that StreamYard link I just put. It's also pinned at the top of the chat. By all means, come on in and join the fun. We'd certainly love to hear from you and hear what your opinion is. What about you, John? Have you had people block scales and keep you from getting off? I mean, have you ever run into that?
I haven't run into it that much, but here's the thing. Okay. When you're moving your tandems, you go across the scale, you pull off, you go around to the back of the parking lot. It's not that hard. You pull up in front of the truck parked all the way in the back. It takes you a couple minutes to move your tandems. Then you loop back around to get back on the scale to reweigh if that's what you're going to do. It's not hard.
Mm-hmm.
If you park in front of the scale, what you're doing is holding the next person up, and they're holding the next person up, and then it becomes a backlog. It's just called professional courtesy. You do what's best for your fellow trucker.
It is. It is. I mean, a lot of people on the internet are making stinks, and some are good, some bad. Me, I'm kind of neutral, but I'm also firm on, look, there's a right way to do this, and then there's a wrong way to do this. Don't take it upon yourself to be that greedy me too and type of person and say, you know what, me first, I'm going to do what I got to do. Because here's the logic. She gets out and complains to the guy, and broken English or not, all that aside, he's got to leave where he's at and go back around and get in line anyway. So it makes no sense to do your adjustments right there in front of the scale, blocking everybody else. The guy behind you may not have to adjust. The guy behind you may have a schedule to keep and can't wait there 15, 20 minutes for you to go inside, get the ticket and all that kind of stuff. My guess is he'd already pissed her off before she even got out of the truck. So as far as I'm concerned, she was justified raising hell with him, and even more so justified by doing it publicly. Now, if she gets a viral video out of it, then that's fine too. But that's her. But there's no sense as a trucker complaining because she's doing stuff Karen style, because you know what? It's just going to incentivize her to do it again.
Actually, what I'd like to add to that, on the flip side of that is, you know, when you're going to approach somebody because you feel like they're doing something wrong, how about you just approach them in a polite, normal manner first? I mean, maybe she did and she didn't have that in the video, but that's normally how you should handle it. You should walk up to somebody in a polite manner. Hey, you know, you really shouldn't sit here. Can you please pull forward so I can come through? Instead of just automatically going into Karen mode. Now, maybe that happened and she didn't show that on the video. You know, that's not my call, but that's how I would handle it. It's always best. It's always easier to get people to listen to you if you come across less aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
More likely you're just going to get met with somebody being really angry if you come across like she was. But not that she wasn't justified. I'm not saying that.
The moment you
more of a professional manner.
Yeah, I was going to say, the moment you bring a camera into the mix and you start putting a camera up in somebody's face, they're automatically going to go in defensive. So anything you say at that point in time usually is ignored because of what you're seeing. You know, think about it. You know, whether you speak English or not, you know, if you're a driver and you're sitting in a situation with somebody who's apparently aggressive about whatever it is you're doing, the moment that camera is in your face, you know, me, I tend to be on a defensive. You know, what's your angle? What are you thinking? What are you doing? I don't know what you're doing. You know, I may look next week and see my face viral TikToking all over the place. So, you know, to your point, John, getting out with a camera is usually not the greatest idea if you want to prove a point. If, however, all you want to do is complain, you know, be that a different course of action, whatever. I mean, yeah, by all means, grab the camera. What say you, John?
I'll add a story to this if you don't mind. I've had something very similar to happen. What happened to me was I was out there in Colorado and I had to get scaled at the Flying J out there, just east of Denver there. And I'm pulling up on the scale and I'm using my app. No response, no response, no response. And it kept kicking it back. Well, I had 2 or 3 trucks behind me. I couldn't go forward because there was trucks moving, coming out of the fuel island and coming to me. I don't know how many people's ever been to the Flying J just east of Denver, but trust me, it's a pain, especially when they're busy.
Yeah.
And, I'm trying to get scaled. I'm trying to get them to communicate with the app. They're ignoring me. And I have this wonderful Karen come up there. You terrible trucker. You give this name bad. And I couldn't even understand half what he was saying.
Right.
And I'm like, sir, I am trying to get the scale to communicate. I said, you're
Right.
going to run into the same problem if you run doing this way.
Mhm.
And he just wouldn't understand. Finally, they came through. And then I also had a getaway to where I could get out of there. And I got off the scale. I went around where I could adjust my tandems and it got back on the scale. And then this whole time that yo-yo was pointing his finger and cursing me. And I'm like, whatever, dude, you need to understand it's not always bread and butter.
Yep. So Kirk Bodine says, I don't know what to think. Well, you know what, Kirk? It's probably the best place to be, because I actually went the extra mile of actually looking up the site, which is half the reason why the banner, the image is up here the way it is. I actually did some research, and the first 2 videos that you see here are actually well thought out videos, I think. The one, obviously, with the guy in front of the truck, that's the video itself I just previewed for you guys. The other 2 next to it are her responses to people commenting to her, and to listen to her, she's actually very smart. I don't normally push people's channels if I've never met them, but in this case, I'm kind of impressed and actually listened to her talk to other drivers. She's quite smart and she's very intelligent. So I'm sure that just by looking at some of the videos on her site, she strikes me as a very mild-tempered person, non-Karen-like. So I don't know. And tell me what you think on a later video. But, for right now, I think personally, I think she was justified.
What's her
Any
TikTok
last-
handle so that people know if they want to go check it out?
You're talking about for her?
Yeah.
Okay. Smart idea. Yep. Her TikTok handle looks like TANAHA. I don't know how to pronounce that _. But that's where you can find her if you want to look at her at her channel. Clearly, the first 2 videos are very viral. They're currently trending, obviously. Didn't really look into too much detail about the other videos, but she does have. I watched a few of them. She does have quite a few well-informed and very useful responses. Because I think her thing is she just replies to people that comment on her videos or whatever the case is.
Right.
I don't know what other platforms she has. But I will say, she's not a Karen. She's far from it. There are others on other platforms and other channels that have made that claim, but she's not. I don't think she was a Karen. I think she was justified. Any last thoughts, Frank? Or we move on to the next story?
I'd move on because I already told my story.
Well, you seem interested in saying something else. I just want to make sure we covered that. Anyway, so yeah, moving on to the last story. The pedestrians just whatever. I'll try that word someday when I got enough tongue to do it with. Trucker shortage, a big mystery or a big myth? Well, today we're delving into this topic because, well, it's been capturing a lot of attention. Well, let's do it from a critical mindset, okay? There's been talk about significant driver shortage for years, reportedly hitting record levels this year. But no, let's just wait a second. Where exactly is this information coming from? This article that I'm referring to today, in fact, was published a couple of weeks back. And I'm going to ask, should we accept what we're seeing just at face value? Or should we actually dive into more accurately where the source is coming from? See, up to now, I blame the media. Because every time you turn on major news networks, they cite the same statistics over and over and over again. It's always 80,000 drivers. We need, so many more. I mean, the numbers are just all over the place, but 80,000's always been a standard metric they go by. Well, according to some in the industry, like a gentleman named Ken Pratt of Pratt Trucking, he feels the problem with the shortage is a demographic one. He says many drivers are older and nearing retirement, and therefore not enough drivers are coming in from the younger demographic to replace the older ones leaving. My thing, and that's what this story says, if you read into it, again, the links will be in the description at the close of the live. My thing is, I don't think there are that many older drivers to affect a demographic that spans over 3.5 million drivers. And that number varies as well. That number changes quite a bit. So here again, here's a little snapshot of a part of what one of the people talk about in terms of this story, and seems to fall right in the face of the usual narrative spilled out by most when it comes to the story in trucking.
Express. The problem is that most drivers are close to retirement age and there aren't enough new drivers to replace them. The problem is forcing trucking companies to really incentivize the job. You can actually make money getting your CDL license in St. Joseph.
Now, that being said, the rest of the story goes on to talk about the problems resulting from the older drivers leaving and not enough younger drivers coming in. They reference the younger drivers from the perspective of 18 and 20-year-olds. We've already been down that rabbit hole. Go look at my future or previous lives and see where I stand on that. But are there really that many problems with the industry that we're failing to incentivize people not only to train, but to get them in? And get this story also says, and here's where I'm going to leave the room open for discussion. The story clearly says the ATA claims we need over 1 million new drivers in the next decade. Now, while that may be true, if you're a forecaster, you see a need for it, please tell me where this need is. But I'm going to question the number. A, is it inflated? And B, what is their motive? Why are they doing this very thing? And from that, I want to open the discussion and debate. Is the American Trucking Association seriously misinformed? Okay. They put out an analytics that said they analyzed a 64,000 driver shortage yet last year. And this year, it's going to reach a high of 82,000. Now, that's different than the numbers the media spits out. Not by much, but it's different. But I'm firmly entrenched in, from what I've read, the ATA is now the leading source of the myth behind the trucker shortage. So let's bring this up and let's put a cap on this, shall we? Because I don't know about you, but I'm sick of hearing about this shortage. It's really irritating me because you know what? From my perspective, we have an overcapacity. We do not have a shortage. We have a problem with there being too many drivers. Hence the reason why the rates are in the toilet. So what do you think, Frank? Do you think the rates are in the toilet because of the ATA, or do you think it's just the fact that we got just too loose of a set of rules and just anybody with a pulse can join the industry? What do you say?
Well, I'll start this off with whenever I began trucking 24 years ago, they said the same thing. All these older elders are retiring, they need to fill them and all that to keep the trucking going. There wasn't a shortage back then. There's not a shortage now. It's just too many trucks and not enough freight.
Right.
And it's getting worse by the day. It really is. And
Amen. Too many
Go
trucks.
ahead.
It's just too many trucks is bottom line. That's my call on that. And to hear people like the ATA through this article anyway say otherwise, I think is preposterous. I really do. What say you, John?
There is a lot to go into here.
Yep.
I'm actually going to use that comment that you have highlighted right there.
Go ahead.
He says,
By all means.
he says a carrier has to have a shortage of drivers. You have to have open trucks and loads that do not move. Well, in our current condition, there may be open trucks, but there are no loads that aren't moving. There are not enough loads for the amount of drivers we have. So just by that one comment, you can disprove everything right there. But beyond that, this is a BS, stupid conversation that politically is put out there that really is not in touch with reality. We are not in a shortage. If anything, we're actually in an overage right now. And I get what they're saying. Older drivers are going to retire. That may be a possibility. They've been saying that for a lot of years, but the older guys haven't been leaving. And I can tell you right now, if they want to bring younger guys in, there's an easy solution to this, and it's not offering them incentives to join CDL school. It's the first 2 or 3 years that you start driving, you're so grossly underpaid that you don't feel like the industry is worth it.
Yeah.
And then you leave, and then you don't realize that after that 2 or 3 year first period, you can make pretty good money as a truck driver. But it's hard to get past that first 2 or 3 years because we have to provide for our family. So honestly, if they really wanted to fix the driver shortage per se, then that would be how they would handle it. But there is no shortage. It's
right now in the industry, the pay scale for drivers is really all over the map. Because you got, just like Midlife says, on one hand, there is no shortage of drivers, but then go on and say it's a pay issue. To his credit, pay is a major problem because on one hand, you've got one company that says, I'll pay this, but then you've got another company competing with him that says, I'll do this. And, you get a bidding war going on between the companies, and that's where you get the beginning of the seesaw argument between why can't I keep drivers and why do drivers, become unsatisfied? Because of these bigger guys that keep on doing this competitive back and forth. A driver will leave here and then go there. The PSP setup was supposed to eliminate all that, but they get around it, and they always do. But it all comes down to one thing. If you're going to choose a career, you choose it because it fits your lifestyle. It's one you can adapt to. And as in the case of our first story, you're able to handle changes that come your way, but then also too, there throughout your career, whether it's because you do it yourself or it's offered in front of you, there's opportunities to move up the scale, become better, make more money, and make things happen, to favor you over anything else. What say you, Frank?
To add to this story a little bit here, whenever I was saying that, 24 years ago, there was the same issue, basically. States like my state here in Oklahoma actually provided a tax write-off to these big corporate companies to send these kids or send these students, we'll say, to school, truck driving school. They just sign a contract with them and then come to work for them for X amount of time, which was usually about a year. And that's what they're trying to do again. And it's not something that's going to work totally, because there's going to be a lot of these young guys that get in it and find they don't like. They're going to be, stuck with a bill that they can't afford, because that bill goes back to the person if they drop out before their program's up. Yeah. So, it's not going to turn out as well as they're thinking.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm gonna highlight the comment that Tom left down at the bottom. He says, "No, the ATA is spot on. Over a decade, they'll need about 1 million drivers." Let me clarify something, Tom. I said earlier in the intro, leading up and reading into the story, forecasting is somebody's job, and there's someone at an office somewhere that's forecasting a business model, a projection of growth, or some setup somewhere that says business will boom. And yes, every low has a high, and we're currently working through that right now. But 1 million drivers, come on, we already got 3.5 million. And I don't even think that statistic's estimated correctly either. I think we're probably a little more than that now. But 1 million's quite a bit. That's nearly 20% of our current market, and we're now already saturated. Now, bear in mind, Tom, A decade's a long way off. 10 years is a long time. That equates to about 100,000 drivers a year. I get that. That's a lot for an industry. Okay. It's said that currently, as far as carriers anyway, on a monthly basis, we're losing between 1,000 to 2,500 per month already. Now, we're losing, not gaining, losing. So let that go. Let the market bottom, let it equalize, let the equilibrium take hold, and then let's talk about what's coming up 10 years down the road. Whoever's making these forecasts, Tom, I'm sure they're doing it with every good intent, but I seriously doubt they're using the right information, because for the ATA to come out and say that and use that as a basis by which to make their recommendations to Congress for all the rules and laws you see, I think it's wrong, because I think in a decade things will look completely different than they do today, and I think that everything in terms of the market anyway will be flat on its freaking head. What say you, John?
Yeah, I got a lot to say about this, so give me a minute if you don't mind.
Go,
So
take time.
I actually am going to agree with him on that. Let me explain to you why. In a decade, you got to take every driver right now that's 50 years old or above. Sorry, my dogs might be jumping in the screen here.
No. Take care. Do what you got to do.
If hang on, sorry. All right. You take every driver that's 50 years old or older right now, and now 10 years from now, they're all in their 60s. Okay, I guarantee there's got to be close to 1 million of those. That's retirement age, guys. Like, I don't disagree with him on that one. I do believe in a decade we probably will need 1 million drivers. That's 1/3 of our current driving population. I 100% agree with that.
And while you're talking about that, John, also remember too, the statistics I named earlier talked about the carriers that are leaving the market. Okay. No one's mentioned statistics, and I have not even thought to look to find how many are actually starting up. I don't know what the statistics behind startups are.
Well,
are they more than what we're leaving? Are they less? I mean, I don't know what that statistic says.
You don't know where the market's going to go. So
you don't.
I mean,
exactly.
But here's the thing: if we just take where we are right now, which is at a low, by the way, and we're a little over in drivers, I agree with all of that, because there is no shortage as of right this second. But in a decade, when you lose probably 1/3 of your workforce, even if we are where we are right now, you're still going to need a heck of a lot of drivers. 1 million drivers, I don't think it sounds like a lot, but it's not as many as you think over 10 years. That's like what, 100 grand a year, I think he said. And I agree with that. I 100% agree with that. Where I'll disagree with him is he said, I oddly don't feel, grossly underpaid. Well, not your company can't hire every new driver that's on the market. There are companies as a new driver, you can come out and make exceptional money. Okay. Not saying that's not a possibility. And you know what? I don't want to lead anybody wrong, but one of these channels, not on the screen, but maybe in the comment section, I think they're going to be making a video about, how to look for a new company. You probably should watch that video, because I'm not going to tell you anything more than that, because I don't want to leave it out there for other people to copy them, because it's a great idea. But I'm telling you, if you're not careful, you will end up signing up with Prime, with Swift, with Ego Holdings, whatever you want to call them, all those different companies out there, and you're going to make 40 to 60 cents per mile, which doesn't sound 60 cents per mile. It doesn't sound horrible, but I'm just telling you, you can make a lot more than that if you keep your record clean 2 or 3 years, even if you do start with one of those. And then in 2 or 3 years, you can make more money than that. But you have to be willing to serve your time. Now, if you can get in with one of those great companies at the beginning, do it. More power to you. Do your research. Make sure that you do the right things and find one of them. But if you can't, then just know. Like when I first started, I was making under $1,000 a week as a truck driver. I mean, I was willing to take that hit for a couple of years to learn my industry.
Yeah.
But
then to realize,
getting into.
Then to realize as well, Tom, too, he says down, if businesses do not change at all, They will still need 1 million drivers in a decade. I get it. You want less drivers, so you make more. It's not just simply that cut and dry. It's just like John just said a moment ago. When you think about the industry overall, a lot of these statistics are set up and baked in an average, so to speak. An average, a mean, however you want to look at it. Industry-wide, though, an individual like yourself, you're cut out in a specific niche or sector. This whole argument may be different for you. It may be completely different for John, as it may be for Frank, as it may be for me, because, I don't exactly remember everything you do midlife, but, when it comes down to it, everybody's different. The industry, there are so many sectors and so many spots that, there are so many places, where you need X drivers here, you might only need, X less here, flatbed versus reefer. Specialized in step deck may be seeing a serious overcapacity right now. But then again, when it's just regular flatbed, maybe they're all right. I'm hypothesizing. Point that I'm making is, the same statistic industry-wide cannot carry through and represent the entire industry. I think it's wrong. And for ATA to sit there and say X is true when in fact it's not, I think is a gross misrepresentation, especially when the original mission of the ATA was to represent the industry. And they currently do not do that. So that's my take on that. And I think if you're going to represent an industry, I think you owe it to be equal across the board. Yes, we have a shortage overall because of factors that say the older generation's timing out and the younger ones are not coming in that fast. Leave it at that. But don't cry these numbers and say, oh, we're going to need millions or we're going to need 82 or, and that number changes daily. That's misrepresentation. And that leads people down a path when they get into an industry thinking it's going to be a way that it's not because of some big outfit that says, oh, we're back to buy or no, represent it right. And when the people get in and actually start doing a job and feel satisfied, then you're doing something right. What do you think, Frank?
Well, I'm going to add to this is the factor of it is also that I feel that you have all these companies out here that are advertising, you're going to make 80 to 90 to 100,000 in a year. It's possible, I reckon, but then, what if you don't? Then you get disappointed, especially when you're new to the career. You don't understand it. You get out here and you're like, well, I only made 65,000. They said I was going to make 100,000.
Look at what Midlife says. The problem is not drivers don't do the research and the networking. They complain they're not paid. It's exactly what you're talking about, Frank.
Yeah.
A lot of people just take at face value what's being said to them. They don't do it.
Well,
they don't do the research.
Whenever I started driving, I made 25 cents a mile once I got my own truck, and that's been almost 24 years ago, so look at it now. I mean, most places I won't touch the truck unless I'm getting at least 60 cents a mile minimum,
Exactly. I mean, a little bit about me. I started out in trucking working for probably the single worst company on the planet. I won't mention them, but I moved on and I became a driver with Warner. I thought that was a step up. And, for me, it was because back then I was making, just like John said, roughly about 9 to 1,000. I was doing a dedicated run. And back in 2014, when I started that run, I started trucking in 2012. Back in 2014, I thought that was a catch me out, man. I'm making good money. I'm doing great. Yeah. Well, sooner or later, I discovered I wasn't making crap. The company basically tried to sell me the bill of goods on this dedicated route, but it didn't tell me the finer points about the money. And I soon found out the money was elsewhere in the industry. So I then decided to do it myself. And I'm glad I did. Because for me, anyway, I can't speak for everybody else on this panel, but for me, anyway, owning my own truck was the single best decision I could have made. Because I got to then see, A, it's always better to do your research before you jump in, to Tom's point. And B, there is money in the industry. You just got to be smart enough to look and keep your sights out for where it is. So doing research, to Tom's credit, is everything you should do. Don't just take face value that Chris Spears says we have a shortage, or Pete Buttigieg says we need drivers. Just because these big reps and representatives say it's so, doesn't mean they're right. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I really want to focus on a couple of these comments that they're poking at us a little bit, and I get it. I mean, Midlife says I'm leaving in a decade. John's leaving in a decade. Frank's leaving within the decade. I would include Steven on that too. Is probably leaving in a decade. But I will say that our current pay is no different than it was 5 years ago, but our inflation has been. So really, even the experienced truckers are making less money now than they did 5 years ago. Not that I'm not complaining. I'm not saying we're not making enough. I'm just saying, in comparison to the standard of living and the economy, we're making less. So we might not be done with it in a decade. We might need to keep driving into our silver years, or whatever they call those things that I won't get to. And as for being a shortage, right now we don't have a shortage. I know Midlife isn't going to agree. Right now we don't have a shortage, and it's not because I want to make more money. It's just common economics. If there's not enough loads and there's too many drivers, yes, we're going to make less, which also means there's too many drivers. If there's less drivers, we're going to make more. That's true.
Yep.
But in the same thing, there's more loads. So it's common economics. Right now, there's no shortage. Even when we were making buku bucks back after the illness went around, there wasn't a shortage then either. There was just a large amount of freight. And that's why we were getting paid so well. Now, I know Midlife's going to go off in the comment section about this, but I'm just saying that's the truth. The truth is, as we retire, as us older guys move out and the newer guys come in, they're going to have to fill some shoes. And when they do, it is filling a spot. And I don't think 1 million is that far off. I bet you 1/3 of our trucking population right now, over 1/3, is 10 years from retiring. No joke. So I would agree with that one. And then forecasting.
I will agree.
Forecasting in every industry. It's not just trucking. I agree with that too. He put that in the comments. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying to push a driver shortage at our current state is ridiculous.
Well, and here's where I think my argument started, and I think we're going to probably wind up leaving this because, first of all, I've never been a fan of the ATA. My reasons for that are another live and another video entirely. But having said that, I'm of the opinion that when it comes to representing the industry, the ATA is the last credible source I'm going to fall to. Now, that having been said, I have not noticed them changing views or numbers very much. The media, on the other hand, they're famous for it. Every time you turn around, they're changing numbers. Why do you suppose that is? Why do you suppose every time you turn on CNN, they lean on that $60,000 statistic? Then you turn over to MSNBC, and they turn on, the heat with the million statistic I mentioned. They'll all say the same thing, but they'll all say it differently, and the numbers constantly change. Why do you think that is? What do you think is behind that, Frank?
Well, my opinion, as Grumpy Hodger's going to say, they were after the ratings, if anything, on that deal, because it draws more attention, because more people are like, oh, really, 1 million drivers are short? I mean, that's kind of what they're after. Once again, we're not short on drivers. And as far as me, as long as I can pass the physical and can drive one, I'm driving.
Exactly. Yeah. What about you, John? What do you think is behind the change in numbers?
I don't think it's I think it's a political play right now. But and I'm going to go back to one other point real quick. I'm not pointing out pay as being part of the driver shortage. People that drive a truck professionally, yes, we do it for money, but money isn't the reason we do it. Like, I didn't decide to go into trucking because I thought I was going to become rich on it. It was because I was something I always wanted to do. I know that's for midlife trucker. I know that's true for him. I know that's true for Frank when he started the Grumpy Old Trucker.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it's also true for you. People that get into truck driving as a career, not as a job, they don't get into it for the money. Yes, we want more money. No joke. No lying about it. Everybody's going to complain about it. You never make enough money, no matter what industry you're in. So, but to go back to what you were saying real quick, I don't know. I think you guys pretty much already filled all that in, but a midlife trucker is really poking my buttons right now on the comment section. I really want to respond to each and every one of these things. Like the one comment says, Walmart's hiring, KAG's hiring, GP Transco's hiring, RTS is hiring. They're all hiring. Well, let me see.
True.
He just listed Walmart, which is all of their own freight. And by the way, they don't hire new drivers. KAG, I know nothing about. GP Transco, I'm not familiar if they hire new drivers or not, but there are some things you should probably want to do some research on GP Transco before you jump in there. Yes.
In terms of
before you start saying companies are hiring, you need to know why they're hiring. Maybe it's because they're hiring people that are in and out, day in, day out, leaving next day type of thing.
Revolving door.
Reason. So
yeah, retention can be an issue with people, especially when you tend to hire people and suddenly discover, okay, it's not what they advertised it to be. My take on the reason the numbers keep changing is simply this: there's a shell game going on. Much like the screen before you, they keep changing up the circumstance and they keep making up statistics that fit their story. Whether you're talking about Walmart, whether you're talking about the media, whether you're talking about just any issue at all, anywhere, it's always a shell game. The media is famous for playing it. They constantly do it all the time. And it's never going to change. The media will always side with the one entity that contributes to their storyline, their pocketbook, and everything that they do constantly. So no matter what way you look at it, I say it's a shell game. There are others in the industry that don't look at it that way. But what do you think of that concept, John? Do you think a shell game concept is part of it?
Can you explain what you mean by a shell game?
Well, much like the pictures on the screen just a moment ago, you've got one outfit that
moving people around, in other words.
Exactly. Whether it's companies, issues, or pay or circumstances. I think they're just doing that as a means to distract from the real issue, which midlife kind of hit on. The issue isn't pay. The issue is retention. If you're going to hire people and you're going to put people in, do the best job you can and keep the hired, keep those you hire. Don't just treat them like complete dog crap.
Yeah.
What do you think, John?
Yeah, I mean, in our industry, that's a real thing. I mean, the shell game where people are just switching carriers and, rearranging, that happens every day in our industry. Like I said, change is normal. That trucking is change, that by definition. You have a comment up here from KOTO Raps. Highlight that one for me. I want to talk about it for a second, if you don't mind.
KOTO. It's probably something on yours.
Here, I'll do it. Oh, I can't.
Yeah. I can't see which one you're talking about.
Got it right there.
Oh,
so as a CDO, he's been looking for work and hasn't been able to secure a job recently. He came across an opportunity where he'll get paid under the table, potential risks. First of all, I want to say, if you can't secure a job in trucking, there's probably two reasons for that. The first reason is your driving record probably isn't good. That's the number one reason why people have trouble securing employment in trucking. The other reason is something in your personal life is holding you back. Again, that's not something that, I can comment about. But as for working under the table, I would say don't do it. The reason why is if that ever gets revealed to the IRS, and I'm not a financial aid, and this is just my opinion, I'm not giving advice, but I would never do that personally because if that ever comes across the IRS, you are going to end up going in jail for the tax bill that you're going to owe.
Yeah, not to mention too, there might be some potential implications being under the table in terms of regulations. So if I were you, Cato, to answer that one, I would look at the Jeffrey Keller handbook. I'd really look at it, and also look at some other regulations because, if we're in an industry, number one, I want to be paid what I'm worth. Number two, I want opportunities that you're never going to get if you're paid under the table. If you're made to disappear or made to not exist, you're limited, very limited. And I don't like limitations. So
let me add one more thing.
Say again, John.
I just want to add one more thing to that. And I don't do this very often, but I'm going to put it out here, and hopefully, Steve, you're okay with this. Tell your friend if he has a clean record and he doesn't have any skeletons in his closet personally. What I mean by that is, DUIs, drug arrests, tested positive on a drug test, anything like that, and he has a clean driving record, no accidents or anything. Email me at Driving with John today. Send him my email and have him email me. We'll see. Maybe he's just not looking.
Once my sound card affected you, John. Started the music and awesome. it kind of bled you out. You want to repeat that last sentence so our friend hears it?
I won't do it on screen, but I will do it off screen. Have your friend email me, and if he's got a clean record, Driving with John today at gmail.com. He's got a clean record and no personal skeletons. Maybe I can help him out. I would rather not see someone put themselves and their family at risk by going under the table. And
right, yeah. Makes complete sense. I get that. Look, guys, at the end of the day, I don't know about you, but the media has a problem. And until they work it out, Truckin' City Media, we're here. Together, we can make trucking great again. I don't know about you, but I don't believe this short is crap. Truckers aren't just surviving. We're thriving. We're out here making things happen day in and day out. Keep on looking here for more on this myth and other stories as well. Also, check out Driving with John and Grumpy Old Trucker. Their channels are equally as informative and entertaining. Be sure to check them out. We're here every weekend, Saturdays at 11 o'clock. Remember, this is BossMan reminding you, truckers are people too. We operate these trucks. It's the truck that make the deliveries, but it's you that make the difference. Until next week, remember, guys, keep the faith, keep it real, and keep it rolling.